Welcome back to the channel. If you're here late at night looking for a story to drift off to, you're in the right place. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. She was born on a rainy spring morning, April 18, 1985, in a quiet Midwestern town called Brookhaven. Her parents, Daniel and Marlene Pierce, named her Elena Pierce, a name that fit her easily. From the beginning, Elena had a way of softening rooms. She laughed quickly, trusted easily, and carried a warmth that made people feel noticed. At church on Sundays, older women would comment on her kindness. Teachers described her as gentle, creative, and thoughtful, the kind of child who noticed when others were left out. Elena's early childhood appeared steady from the outside, but behind closed doors, cracks slowly formed. By the time she was 11, her parents' arguments had grown louder and more frequent. What began as tension became constant conflict. When the divorce finally came, it landed like an earthquake in Elena's life. Daniel moved out. Marlene packed up what she could and relocated with Elena to Cedar Falls, Iowa, hoping distance might dull the pain. It didn't. Elena never fully recovered from the feeling that her family had fractured without warning. She carried that loss quietly, internalizing it as a fear that nothing good ever stayed whole. Even so, she pushed forward. Art became her refuge. Colors and shapes gave her a sense of control she lacked elsewhere. After high school, she enrolled at Hawthorne Community College to study visual design. She had a natural eye for balance and detail, and instructors often commented that her work felt personal, almost emotional. After graduation, Elena craved a reset. She wanted somewhere new, somewhere that didn't know her past. She moved east to Riverton, North Carolina, a growing city filled with startups, creative agencies, and promise. There, she enrolled in a short marketing program and quickly found work doing freelance design. She built websites, designed flyers, helped small businesses tell their stories. For the first time, she felt rooted. More importantly, she found friends. In nearby Ashford, she built a tight circle of people who supported her, celebrated her wins, and noticed when she pulled away. After years of drifting, Elena finally felt like she belonged somewhere. Stability, at last, seemed possible. That's when she met Caleb Rowan. It happened one evening in March 2008 at a local cafe that doubled as a music venue. Caleb was performing that night. Guitar slung low, voice rough but confident. He had presence. When he spoke, people listened. Elena noticed him immediately, and when they talked afterward, she felt a spark she hadn't felt in years. They discovered they shared a birthday, April 18th, and laughed about fate doing the heavy lifting. Caleb had grown up in Raleigh, born in 1980 into a deeply religious household. Music had always been his escape. He played anywhere that would have him, bars, coffee shops, open mics, slowly building a local following. People described him as charismatic, intense, and passionate. What they didn't see, at least not at first, was how fragile his inner world really was. Years earlier, Caleb had married his high school sweetheart, Lydia Moore. The relationship burned fast and collapsed just as quickly. The divorce left him spiraling. He wrote songs about loss, betrayal, destiny. Around that time, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and major depression. Doctors prescribed medication, but Caleb resisted structure. He didn't like rules. He didn't like being told what to do. Instead of treatment, he leaned into alcohol, then harder substances, convincing himself he was self-medicating. As the years passed, his grip on reality loosened. Caleb began talking about conspiracies, about forces controlling the world, about being chosen for something greater. He rejected doctors, mocked therapy, and dismissed modern medicine entirely. At the same time, his music career appeared to be improving. He was booking regular gigs, posting constantly online, cultivating an image that hid the chaos beneath. When Elena entered his life, the contrast was striking. To outsiders, they looked like an artistic couple chasing dreams together. But privately, the relationship unraveled quickly. Caleb was controlling. He monitored her friendships, questioned her whereabouts, criticized her work. His jealousy came in waves, followed by apologies that felt sincere enough to pull her back in. Elena had grown up learning that love required endurance. She stayed. Within months, they married quietly. No announcement, no celebration. Her friends were stunned when they found out after the fact. Still, they supported her, hoping Caleb would settle, hoping marriage might bring stability. It didn't. When Elena became pregnant, she was overwhelmed with joy. She imagined building the family she never got to keep. Caleb reacted differently. He became more possessive, more volatile. When their son, Noah, was born, Elena devoted herself completely to motherhood. Caleb named the baby after himself, a detail that didn't go unnoticed. Fatherhood didn't change him. He continued performing, cheating, using substances, rarely home. Then came an opportunity to work in the Caribbean, managing promotions for music venues in St. Merrill Island. Caleb left without hesitation, promising it would be temporary. Elena stayed behind, raising their infant alone. What she didn't know was that Caleb wasn't alone. On the island, he met Vanessa Clark, a single mother with entertainment industry aspirations. Vanessa had money, assets from a previous marriage, and connections Caleb lacked. To him, she wasn't just a partner, she was opportunity. Their relationship escalated quickly. Back in North Carolina, Elena endured humiliation as Caleb flaunted the affair. He taunted her, belittled her, used Vanessa as leverage. Finally, something shifted. Elena told him she was done. She was leaving. Even Caleb's family supported her decision. Then Elena learned she was pregnant again. Despite everything, she tried once more to hold the family together. She packed up her life and moved to St. Merrill Island with Noah, hoping proximity might fix what distance had destroyed. Instead, she became an obstacle. Caleb wanted freedom, not accountability. When their second son was born with serious medical complications, they returned to North Carolina for treatment. Caleb resented the move. He blamed Elena for limiting his life. Meanwhile, Vanessa had relocated to New York and urged him to join her there. He did. What followed would change everything. Months later, Caleb asked Elena for a favor. He wanted to take Noah for a short modeling shoot in the city. He promised to bring him back within days. Elena hesitated, then agreed. She believed her children deserved a relationship with their father. Caleb never brought Noah back. Scrolling through social media, Elena discovered the truth. Caleb had married Vanessa. They were living together with her son. When Elena confronted him, he dropped the final blow. Their marriage, he claimed, had never been legal. She checked. He was right. There was no valid signature, no legal union, no protection. Days later, Caleb and Vanessa filed for emergency custody and won. Elena's nightmare was only beginning. That was the moment her life tipped towards something darker, something she would never escape. And it started with trust. Elena Pierce did not sleep the night she learned the truth about her marriage. She sat on the edge of her bed in Riverton, laptop open, staring at scanned court documents that stripped away the last illusion she had been clinging to. The man she had married was, legally speaking, never her husband at all. One missing signature had erased years of her life. Worse still was what followed. Because there had never been a legal marriage, there had never been a formal custody agreement. When Caleb Rowan and Vanessa Clark filed for emergency custody of Noah in New York, Elena was already at a disadvantage. She had no stable job at that moment, no permanent housing lined up, and no legal framework protecting her as a spouse. Caleb appeared alone at the initial hearing, calm and convincing, painting Elena as unstable and irresponsible. The judge ruled without hearing her side. Elena learned she had lost custody of her son through a phone call. She collapsed onto the floor, shaking, the sound leaving her throat raw and broken. Friends rushed to her side, stunned by how quickly her life had unraveled. She gathered every scrap of evidence she could: text messages, emails, voicemails, proof of Caleb's erratic behavior, his substance abuse, his paranoia. She refused to disappear quietly. When she returned to court weeks later, this time prepared, the atmosphere shifted. Her attorney presented documentation showing Caleb's mental health struggles, his refusal to follow treatment plans, and his history of emotional abuse. The judge ordered psychological evaluations for both parents. While the evaluations were pending, Elena was granted limited access to her children, supervised visits, scheduled phone calls, weekends when possible. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Caleb and Vanessa made sure even that hurt. Calls were interrupted, visits were cut short, excuses piled up. Elena was treated like a visitor in her own children's lives. Meanwhile, Vanessa was pregnant, and the household dynamic shifted again. Elena could feel time slipping through her fingers. Then the psychological evaluations came back. Caleb failed badly. The report described him as disconnected, impulsive, and emotionally volatile. It noted that Noah appeared anxious around him, guarded, uneasy. With Elena, the child relaxed. He smiled. He spoke freely. The evaluator described Elena as attentive, nurturing, and consistently focused on her children's well-being. The court ordered a deeper evaluation of Caleb and revised the custody arrangement to a rotating schedule: 3 days with one parent, 2 with the other. It wasn't justice, but it was movement. By this point, Caleb was unraveling. Friends noticed his temper worsening. His messages grew erratic. He spoke in absolutes. He accused Elena of ruining his destiny, of conspiring against him. Vanessa, now heavily pregnant, stood by him publicly, though cracks were beginning to show. On June 7, 2011, Vanessa gave birth to a baby girl, Lila. Just weeks later, everything stopped. On July 13, 2011, Elena planned to meet her close friend and business partner, Marcus Reed, later that evening. They had been working on a new design project together, something Elena was excited about. She never arrived. At first, Marcus wasn't alarmed. Elena had mentioned she needed to stop by Caleb's apartment in Raleigh to pick up the boys. Her last known message was a text sent to Caleb saying she was on her way. He never replied. Hours passed, then a full day, then another. By the 5th day, fear took hold. Elena had never gone silent like this. She never missed calls, never vanished. On July 18, 2011, her family officially reported her missing. Police moved quickly. Elena's apartment showed no signs of a struggle. Everything was in place. Surveillance footage captured her leaving the building on July 13th. They never showed her return. Investigators turned their attention to Caleb and Vanessa's apartment. When officers entered with a warrant, the smell hit them immediately. Bleach, overpowering and unmistakable. The apartment was unnaturally clean, as if scrubbed in a frenzy. Certain items were gone: a shower curtain, several rugs, a vacuum cleaner. Sections of flooring were discolored, eaten away by harsh chemicals. Then they found the papers. One was a handwritten song draft titled "Woman of Silence." The lyrics described a woman being strangled, her voice fading as control tightened. The second was a typed agreement, allegedly signed by Elena, stating she would give up custody of her children in exchange for $30,000. Detectives didn't buy it for a second. Everyone who knew Elena knew her children were her entire world. Investigators pulled surveillance footage from nearby businesses. Vanessa was spotted days after July 13th at a fast food restaurant with the children, acting normal. Caleb, however, appeared on surveillance cameras in the early hours of July 14th at multiple stores. His purchases told a different story. Cleaning chemicals, goggles, trash bags, heavy-duty tape, a reciprocating saw with extra blades, a lint roller. Later that day, Vanessa asked a relative to watch the kids for an unusually long stretch of time. On July 16th, Caleb bought large quantities of ice and multiple coolers. Shortly after, he rented a U-Haul trailer. Phone records showed they left North Carolina together. Their destination, Bay Ridge, Texas, where Vanessa's sister, Olivia Clark, lived. Texas authorities were alerted and began working with investigators from North Carolina. When officers interviewed Olivia, her account raised immediate alarms. On the night of July 19th, Caleb and Vanessa asked to borrow a boat. They wanted to explore Morrow Creek, a remote canal surrounded by thick vegetation and known wildlife. They asked strange questions. Did alligators eat human remains? Would wild animals destroy evidence? Were sharks nearby? At the same time, surveillance footage placed Caleb at a local hardware store buying heavy gloves and multiple bottles of industrial-grade acid. Police didn't wait. Search teams were deployed to Morrow Creek. The water was dark, choked with reeds and debris. After hours of searching, they found remains. What was left of Elena Pierce. The condition of her body made the cause of death difficult to determine, but forensic examiners concluded she had likely been killed by manual strangulation or a severe blow to the neck. The dismemberment and chemical damage pointed to deliberate attempts to destroy evidence. There was no doubt now. This was murder. As investigators continued building the case, they located Elena's white sedan abandoned miles away. The interior had been thoroughly cleaned. Damage to the rear suggested something heavy had been loaded or dragged. More surveillance footage surfaced, showing Vanessa disposing of acid containers near Olivia's home. On July 25, 2011, just 12 days after Elena was last seen, police arrested Caleb Rowan and Vanessa Clark at Caleb's parents' house in North Carolina. They were charged in connection with Elena's death. But the truth of what happened inside that apartment on July 13th was still being fought over, and both of them were about to tell very different stories. Caleb Rowan and Vanessa Clark sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, barely looking at each other. By the time the trials began, whatever bond had once united them had hardened into blame, fear, and quiet calculation. Each knew the evidence was overwhelming. Each hoped the other would break first. They never coordinated their stories. Caleb's defense leaned on denial wrapped in manipulation. His attorneys argued that Elena Pierce arrived at the apartment uninvited on July 13th, agitated and emotional. According to Caleb, she confronted Vanessa, accused her of stealing her children, and threatened to disappear with them forever. He claimed that during the confrontation, Vanessa panicked, lashed out, and caused Elena's death accidentally. Caleb admitted only to helping cover it up, insisting he was trying to protect the children from trauma. Vanessa told a different version. She described Caleb as controlling, volatile, and terrifying behind closed doors. She claimed she had been emotionally manipulated for years, gradually isolated from friends and family. According to her account, she was in another room with the children when an argument erupted between Caleb and Elena. She said she heard a crash, then silence. When she entered the room, Caleb told her Elena had been injured and ordered her to leave with the kids. Vanessa said she obeyed out of fear. She claimed she didn't know the truth until much later, when they were already on the road to Texas. By then, she said, Caleb threatened her, warning that if she spoke out, she would lose her daughter forever. Prosecutors dismantled both narratives piece by piece. There was no sign of an accidental struggle, no evidence Elena had attacked anyone. The bleach, the missing household items, the forged custody document, and the carefully timed purchases told a story of preparation, not panic. Surveillance footage contradicted Vanessa's claims of ignorance. Her movements aligned too closely with Caleb's, the acid purchases, the disposal footage, the rented trailer. She wasn't a bystander. She was involved. The most damaging evidence came from digital forensics. Deleted text messages recovered from Caleb's phone showed mounting frustration over custody hearings and money. In one message, he referred to Elena as the final problem. Another spoke about being free once this ends. Forensic analysts also reconstructed internet searches from the apartment's router. Questions about dissolving biological material, about waterways, about how long evidence might remain detectable. The jury listened in silence as experts laid it out. This wasn't rage, it was planning. Friends and family testified next. Elena's mother spoke softly, clutching a photo of her daughter with the boys. She described a woman who loved fiercely, who never missed a bedtime call, who endured humiliation just to stay close to her children. Marcus Reed took the stand and described the unanswered meeting, the growing dread, the moment he knew something was wrong. Even Caleb's relatives testified against him. His sister spoke through tears about his declining mental health, his paranoia, his refusal to accept responsibility for anything that went wrong in his life. She said Elena had tried repeatedly to keep peace, even when it cost her everything. Vanessa's sister Olivia testified too. She described the unsettling questions about wildlife, the borrowed boat, the coldness in Caleb's voice. She admitted she had suspected something terrible, but had been too afraid to act sooner. The jury didn't take long. Caleb Rowan was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom barely reacted when the verdict was read. Caleb stared ahead, expressionless, as if detached from the words being spoken. At sentencing, he smiled once briefly when the judge entered. It sent a chill through the room. The judge didn't hesitate. Caleb was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In his statement, the judge spoke plainly. He said the crime reflected a profound absence of empathy and a willingness to destroy another human being to avoid accountability. He added that Elena Pierce's life mattered, and the court would not allow her to be erased or rewritten. Vanessa Clark's sentencing came months later. Her defense pleaded for leniency, emphasizing coercion, fear, and the presence of children during the crime. But the judge was unconvinced. He acknowledged that fear might explain silence, not action, not purchases, not disposal, not lies. Vanessa received a sentence of 14 to 18 years for her role in the murder, followed by an additional conviction in Texas for tampering with evidence, adding 20 more years. As she was led away, she broke down, sobbing. Some believed it was remorse. Others believed it was grief for the life she had destroyed with her choices. The court never fully determined the exact moment Elena Pierce died. What they did determine was intent. Investigators believe Caleb lured Elena to the apartment with false promises, a chance to see her sons, maybe even hope of full custody. It explained why she came alone, despite warnings, why she trusted him one last time. Once inside, she was likely forced to sign the fake custody document, the agreement that would later be used to claim she had walked away willingly. When she resisted, when the plan unraveled, the violence followed. Not sudden, not accidental, calculated. After the sentencing, Elena's children were placed permanently with Caleb's parents. It was the safest option. They were loving, steady, and fiercely protective. They shielded the boys from public attention, refused interviews, and focused on giving them a life as normal as possible. Vanessa's daughter was placed with relatives as well. Years later, people still ask how Elena didn't see it coming. Those closest to her know the answer. She did see it. She just believed love could fix it, that patience could soften cruelty, that if she endured long enough, her family would stay intact. It's a belief many carry quietly. Elena Pierce was not weak. She was loyal. She was hopeful. She was human. Her story is not just about murder, it's about control disguised as love, about manipulation masked as charm, about how dangerous it can be to confuse endurance with strength. In the end, it wasn't Caleb's lies or Vanessa's silence that sealed their fate. It was the trail they didn't know how to erase. Cameras, receipts, data. Ordinary technology that quietly recorded what they tried so desperately to hide. Silent witnesses that spoke when Elena no longer could. And because of them, the truth surfaced, not in time to save her life, but in time to make it matter. It was a cool afternoon in early October in Maple Ridge, a quiet town tucked into the foothills of northern Vermont. The leaves were just beginning to turn, the air sharp enough to hint at winter without fully committing. Lily Carter had just stepped out of Maple Ridge High School, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her phone glowing in her hand as she typed a message to her boyfriend. She was 3 days away from turning 15. On her feet were a pair of black-heeled boots, still stiff and new, an early birthday gift from her mother. She loved them, even though they pinched and rubbed at her heels. She told herself it was worth it. They made her feel grown up. It was a walk Lily had taken dozens of times before, down the same road, past the same houses, toward the same small yellow home where her mother would be waiting. She never made it there. Somewhere between the school doors and the curve in the road near the old community center, Lily Carter vanished. No one saw her struggle, no one heard her scream, and for hours, no one even realized anything was wrong. Lily had been born on October 11, 1999, in Brandon, Vermont, to Mary Ann and Thomas Carter. From the moment she arrived, she had been a bright presence, loud laughter, quick wit, and a kind of fearless energy that filled whatever room she was in. As a child, she preferred scraped knees to quiet play, always choosing bikes, soccer balls, and pickup games over dolls. She proudly called herself a tomboy and lived up to it. She loved classic rock, knew the lyrics to songs most kids her age had never heard, and wore band tees until they were threadbare. Teachers described her as outgoing and friendly. Friends described her as loyal to a fault. Life hadn't been perfect. Her parents divorced when Lily was young, and Mary Ann raised Lily and her younger sister Emma largely on her own. Money was tight, schedules were hectic, but Lily never complained. She adapted. She always did. By the fall of 2014, Lily was a freshman in high school and dating Evan Brooks, a boy from her class who adored her openly and without embarrassment. They texted constantly, shared playlists, and talked about everything from school stress to dreams of getting out of town someday. It was young love, uncomplicated and sincere. On October 8th, the day Lily disappeared, she woke up excited. Her birthday was coming. She had plans. She had ideas. That morning, she chose a gray hoodie, black leggings, and those brand new boots. She winced when she slipped them on, but smiled anyway. At school, her best friend Hannah noticed Lily limping slightly between classes. "Those shoes are betraying you," Hannah joked. Lily laughed it off. She complained about the pain, but never once considered changing them. She made it through the day, chatting in the halls, snapping a couple of photos with friends, counting down the hours until she could go home. At dismissal, Lily realized she'd missed the bus by seconds. Normally, that wouldn't have been a problem. Maple Ridge was small. The walk home was short, less than a mile. She'd done it plenty of times. The weather was cool but clear, and despite her sore feet, she decided to walk. Mary Ann Carter expected her daughter home by mid-afternoon. When Lily didn't walk through the door, she wasn't immediately alarmed. Sometimes Lily stopped at a friend's house, sometimes she lingered to talk. But as daylight faded and the minutes stretched into hours, unease crept in. Marianne called Lily's phone. No answer. She called again, straight to voicemail. By early evening, panic had fully taken hold. Marianne got in her car and drove to the school, hoping to find someone, anyone who had seen her daughter. The school librarian checked records and security footage. Lily had left the building at 2:31 p.m., walking alone, backpack on, phone in hand. She never returned. At 7:15 p.m., Marianne reported her 14-year-old daughter missing. Maple Ridge changed that night. Police moved quickly, combing the area Lily would have walked, knocking on doors, checking yards, scanning wooded patches near the road. Her photo spread across social media within hours. Volunteers poured in, neighbors and strangers alike, forming search lines through fields and forest. Security footage from nearby businesses showed nothing unusual, no struggle, no obvious abduction. Lily's room at home was untouched. Her belongings were all there. She hadn't packed anything. She hadn't left a note. Investigators asked the difficult questions. Had Lily seemed unhappy? Had she talked about leaving? Was there any trouble at home or school? The answers were always the same. No. She had been excited about her birthday. She'd been planning a small party. She'd talked about the future, about school, about everything. There was no indication she had run away. The FBI joined the case within days. Tips flooded in, hundreds of them. Sightings, theories, false alarms. Each one was investigated. Each one led to nowhere. A website called Bring Lily Home appeared, filled with smiling photos, videos, memories shared by friends and teachers. The community clung to hope. On October 11th, Lily's 15th birthday, instead of cake and candles, Maple Ridge gathered for a vigil. People held candles, sang softly, whispered prayers. Marianne stood with Emma beside her, trying to stay upright, trying to believe her daughter was still alive. Days turned into weeks. Phone records showed Lily's last signal pinged roughly a mile from home, then went dark. Her final messages were ordinary, light-hearted texts with Evan. He was questioned, so were friends, classmates, neighbors. Nothing pointed to anyone close to her. Then, on October 22nd, something strange happened. Marianne received a letter in the mail. The postmark dated it several days earlier. The handwriting stopped her cold. It was Lily's. The letter said she was safe, that she loved her family, that she had left on her own and asked her mother not to worry. Marianne read it again and again. It didn't feel right. Yes, it was Lily's handwriting, but the words didn't sound like her daughter. They were stiff, polished, careful in a way Lily never was. Marianne turned the letter over to police immediately. Forensic testing confirmed Lily had written it, but investigators agreed with Marianne's instincts. The letter felt forced, like someone was watching. They did not close the case. Winter came. Snow covered the roads Lily had walked. Searches slowed, then stopped. Hope became something quiet and fragile, carried privately instead of shouted. 5 months after Lily vanished, in March of 2015, a woman was attacked on a road incident nearly 30 miles from Maple Ridge. The details were disturbing. The attacker was arrested on the spot. His name was Ethan Cole. To most people, he was just another violent suspect, but to detectives following Lily Carter's case, something about him felt wrong in a very specific way. They didn't say it publicly, but they began to look closer, and without knowing it, they were standing just feet away from the truth they had been searching for all along. The first nights after Lena vanished were the hardest for the town of Pine Hollow. By day 3, yellow flyers covered shop windows and telephone poles. By day 5, news vans lined the main road. By the end of the first week, the story of a missing 14-year-old had traveled far beyond the mountains. For Mara Collins, time lost all meaning. She slept in short bursts on the couch, phone in her hand, jumping at every vibration. Each unanswered call felt heavier than the last. Detectives retraced Lena's walk again and again. They reviewed traffic cameras, interviewed neighbors, and followed tips that ranged from hopeful to absurd. One caller swore they saw Lena boarding a bus headed out of state. Another insisted she had run off with an older boy. None of it held up. Her room was untouched. Her school bag was gone, but everything else was exactly where she left it. Friends said she had been excited about her birthday, counting down the days. Nothing pointed to a runaway. While Pine Hollow searched, Lena existed in a world no one could see. When the blindfold first came off, she understood only two things. She was not going home, and she had to stay alive. The space she was held in was small and cold, the walls dull and unforgiving. The air smelled of metal and dust. The man who took her kept his distance at first, speaking in a flat, controlled voice. He told her rules. He told her consequences. He made it clear that resistance would make things worse. Lena learned quickly that fear could be useful if she managed it instead of letting it manage her. She counted breaths. She focused on small details, the sound of wind outside, the rhythm of footsteps. She told herself she had survived every bad day before this, and she would survive this one too. Days blurred together. She had no way to mark time except by the moments he opened the door. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes he brought books, old paperbacks with cracked spines. She read them slowly, not for the stories, but because they reminded her that other worlds still existed. When he talked, she listened. She learned that silence made him uneasy, so she asked careful, harmless questions. Where did you grow up? What was your job before this? He liked to talk about himself, about how the world had wronged him, about systems he believed were corrupt. Lena did not challenge him. She nodded. She remembered everything. Back in Pine Hollow, the investigation hit its first wall. 2 weeks after Lena disappeared, Mara received a letter in the mail. The handwriting looked familiar. The words inside said Lena was safe, that she had left by choice, that she loved her family. Mara read it twice, then a third time, her hands shaking. Something was wrong. The words sounded stiff, like someone else's voice wearing her daughter's handwriting. She took the letter straight to the police. Forensic analysts confirmed the writing matched Lena's. That alone would have ended the search in some cases. It didn't here. The detectives agreed with Mara. The message felt controlled, too neat. They treated it not as proof of freedom, but as proof of pressure. The search continued. Winter crept closer. Snow dusted the roads where volunteers still walked shoulder to shoulder, calling Lena's name into the woods. The town held a vigil on her birthday. Candles flickered in the cold, their light reflected in tear-streaked faces. Mara stood with her younger daughter pressed against her side, whispering promises she did not know how to keep. Inside her confinement, Lena heard about the vigil on a small radio the man left on the floor one night. Hearing her name spoken by strangers hurt more than she expected. It also strengthened her resolve. If people were still looking, she could not give up. She began to study her captor more closely. His moods shifted without warning, but patterns emerged. He was calmer when he felt in control. He grew careless when he felt understood. Lena offered neither defiance nor affection. She offered attention. She listened to his stories, his complaints, his theories. Over time, the tension in his shoulders eased when he spoke to her. The door stayed open a little longer. The blindfold disappeared. It was a dangerous balance, but it was the only power she had. Months passed. Outside, life moved on in uneven ways. Some people stopped believing Lena would be found. Others refused to stop hoping. tips slowed. The case file grew thicker, heavier. Then one night in early spring, something unrelated cracked the investigation wide open. A woman in a nearby town reported being assaulted after a minor traffic accident. She described the man who attacked her and the car he drove. When police tracked him down, they found more than they expected. Weapons, forged documents, a history of erratic behavior that raised immediate concern. The man's name was Daniel Rourke. During the search of his property, officers noticed a large sealed structure set back from the house. Rourke became agitated when they approached it, insisting it was private storage and beyond the scope of their warrant. Legally, he was right. The officers documented it and left, unsettled by the encounter but unable to act. Lena listened to Daniel rant that night, his words sharp and frantic. He paced the small space, muttering about mistakes and loose ends. For the first time since her abduction, fear crept into his voice. Lena stayed quiet, heart racing. Something had changed. The next days were filled with tension. Daniel watched the road obsessively. He talked about moving, about starting over. Lena sensed an ending approaching, but she didn't know what kind. She prepared herself for every possibility the only way she could, by staying calm, by staying observant, by staying alive. Outside, detectives compared notes. The description from the assault case overlapped with a tip from Lena's file. The car matched a vehicle seen near the school on the day she vanished. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to reopen old footage, to re-interview witnesses who had almost been forgotten. The pieces began to align. Lena noticed the change in Daniel before he said anything. He stopped lecturing. He avoided her eyes. One evening, he brought her a bag of clothes, the same one she had been wearing the day she disappeared. His voice shook when he told her to get ready. The drive was long and silent. Lena watched familiar landmarks appear one by one, her chest tightening with each turn. When the car finally stopped, she knew exactly where she was, the place where it had all begun. Daniel told her to get out. He didn't look back as he drove away. Lena stood alone on the roadside, the world too bright, too open. She waited until the car was gone, then started walking. Every step felt unreal. When she reached her front door and knocked, she almost didn't believe it was real until it opened. Mara's scream echoed through the house. The reunion was messy and overwhelming and imperfect. There were tears and questions and long silences. Lena said only what she could, that she was back, that she was safe now, that the rest would take time. But the story was not over. Daniel Rourke was still free, and the truth of what he had done was only beginning to surface. Lena knew that surviving was just the first part. What came next would require a different kind of courage. The days after Lena came home felt unreal, like the town of Pine Hollow was holding its breath. Word spread fast. Some people cried with relief. Others watched from a distance, unsure what to say. Mara barely left the house, afraid that if she looked away, her daughter might vanish again. Lena slept in short stretches, waking to every sound, her body still braced for danger even in her own room. Police interviews began carefully. Detectives didn't rush her. They let her set the pace. At first, Lena shared only fragments. A man, a ride, a place she couldn't escape. Every sentence cost her something. Still, she spoke, because she knew silence protected the wrong person. When she finally said Daniel Rourke's name out loud, the room went quiet. Investigators moved quickly. With Lena's statement, the sealed structure behind Rourke's house was no longer just suspicious, it was central. A new warrant was issued. When officers returned to the property, Rourke was already gone. He had packed what he could and disappeared, confirming what many had feared. He knew the walls were closing in. The search for Rourke became urgent and public. His photo was everywhere. Patrols spread across state lines. Tips poured in again, this time sharper, more credible. People remembered seeing him, hearing him talk, noticing the way he watched others. What once seemed like odd behavior now looked like warning signs missed. Meanwhile, Lena faced a different battle. Rumors spread just as fast as relief had. Some people questioned her story, others whispered that she had left willingly. The letter she had been forced to write resurfaced online, twisted into something ugly. For a while, it felt like Pine Hollow didn't know how to hold both truth and compassion at the same time. Lena stayed quiet through most of it. She focused on small victories, sitting at the kitchen table with her sister, walking outside without panic, letting sunlight touch her face. Therapy helped, slowly untangling fear from memory. She learned that survival didn't mean weakness, and that what she had done to stay alive was not something to be ashamed of. Behind the scenes, the case against Rourke grew stronger. Forensic teams searched the container thoroughly. They documented everything: fibers, tools, modifications meant to block sound. Each detail confirmed Lena's account. Digital investigators traced Rourke's movements, his purchases, his online activity. A pattern emerged, one that showed planning, control, and a belief that he would never be caught. Then came the break. A woman came forward reporting that Rourke had paid her with counterfeit bills months earlier. When she tried to use the money, it failed. She confronted him. He panicked. She remembered his name, his car, his voice. Her report tied together two separate investigations and gave authorities the leverage they needed. Rourke was arrested less than a week later during a traffic stop in another state. He didn't resist. He looked smaller in custody, stripped of the control he once wielded. When detectives told Lena he was in custody, she closed her eyes and let herself breathe for the first time since she had come home. The legal process took time. Months turned into years. Rourke faced a mountain of charges, each one representing a piece of what he had done. Lena attended hearings when she could. Other days she stayed home. Healing was not a straight line, and no one forced her to pretend it was. When the trial finally began, the courtroom was full. Lena walked in with her family beside her, steady but determined. She listened as evidence was laid out, as experts explained how technology, persistence, and small human decisions had brought the truth into the open. She watched Rourke avoid her eyes. The verdict was clear: guilty on all major counts. Sentencing day was different. Lena chose to speak. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. She talked about fear, about survival, about how what was taken from her could never be fully returned. Then she said something unexpected. She said she would not let Rourke define the rest of her life, that she refused to carry his cruelty forward. It was not forgiveness for his sake, it was freedom for hers. Rourke was sentenced to decades behind bars, enough to ensure he would never harm anyone again. When the gavel fell, the room exhaled. For Pine Hollow, it was the end of a long chapter of fear. For Lena, it was something quieter. Closure, maybe, or the beginning of peace. Life didn't snap back to normal. It grew into something new. Lena returned to school part-time, then full-time. She found comfort in routine, in choosing what to wear, where to go, who to trust. She discovered strength she didn't know she had, not just in surviving, but in rebuilding. Years later, she would choose a career built on care and connection, helping others feel seen in ways she once hadn't. Her story became a reminder that technology matters, that small clues can change everything, that listening to victims, even when the truth is uncomfortable, saves lives, and that sometimes the strongest witness is the one who survives. Lena Collins was never just a missing girl. She was proof that darkness can be endured, that truth can surface, and that even after the longest night, morning still comes.